Welcome to the Cav Cast. This is your host, CSM NextX. Today we have a very special guest, General.Kleinman, the new GOA, and the Regimental CO for the 7th Cavalry Gaming Regiment. It's great to have you, General.Kleinman.
Hi.
And with me, as always, is Burton to answer any of your questions via chat and all those other good things. So we'll kind of jump into some questions real quick. So General.Kleinman, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about your background in gaming and kind of how you got, started in leadership in the Cav.
Okay. Wow. I don't like doing things live. I've realized I'm much less charismatic.
Don't think of
I've
it as
never been
live.
silent.
Just think of it as...
I think everybody's going to be concerned because I've never been silent for words before in my life. Let's see. Shake it off. Okay, where's it at? Don't get the yips. Cool. So me, I'm 40 something. I say 40 something because I always have to stop and think about it every single time anybody asks me. I've been in the Cav now for it's got to be close to 16 years, something like that. I think 2009. Yeah, had it been somewhere in 2009, probably June-ish. I think late May, early June. I can't remember. But it was before I moved to the Netherlands, so 2009 for sure. In gaming, I don't know, man. I've been around for a hot minute. I came to the Cav. How did I find my way to the Cav? I came to the Cav after leaving another group where I had some concerns over the finances and how dues were spent and collected, and some paperwork issues around that. You'll find I'm very big on knowing where money is. I'm a numbers guy. But I left that group, bounced around to some other groups, and I stumbled on our servers. I stumbled on COD 4, and I was on our server probably for all of 5 minutes before I got kicked. Because I think like everybody who jumped on our COD 4 servers for the first time, I had no idea what tactical realism meant, and the idea that people would impose customized rules that they were going to arbitrarily enforce by fiat on gameplay was, at the time, a absurd notion to me. So like I didn't even think to read them. I don't think. I just stepped on, started running around, capping everybody in the face, and then it was like all real sudden it was like, you can't do that, sights up, crouch movement, yada yada. Why are you sprinting? I'm like, because there's people with guns, and if I don't sprint, they're gonna hit me. So I got kicked, and then I came back and I was like, why'd I get kicked? And some people were like, yo, read the rules. And I was like, what rules? And then they were like, oh. And then they sent me the warnings because they kicked me the first time without sending me the rules. We had a command for that would spam them. And so I read them, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try this. And then I kept coming back. And yeah, that was 16 flipping years ago. Getting started with leadership of Cav, because you asked that as well. So there's if anybody's been in the Cav for more than 5 minutes, I feel like they've probably heard this story from me before. How did I start in leadership of Cav? By having an ego the size of Texas, balls the size of Antarctica, and the clear stupidity to not know any better. I joined the Cav, joined COD 4, went through COD 4's boot camp. Then somebody told me about this game, Arma Assault 2. And they were like, hey, you come check this out. I'm like, I can't afford it. And they're like, yeah, you can. It's cheap. So I bought it because I could afford it. I just didn't want to. And I got it on play with them. And it was like a completely different flipping game. Like the idea of like setting restrictions on your movement speed would be laughable because, I mean, screw it. You want to run. You're going to die tired, your character's just going to give up and pass up. and also just the distances were like so much different, right? Like it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But I've tried to play that game. It was like, oh, now there's cars and there's planes and there's helicopters and there's actual not like really hardcore ballistics, but ballistics play a little bit of part. Like bullets have drop and wind matters. And so I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. But I'd already done the COD 4 boot camp. I'm like, well, come check out this boot camp. So then I went to the second boot camp. And at the time, the boot camp was really poor. And I don't mean to say like people weren't doing their best, but there was no, I don't know, je ne sais quoi. There was no life to it. It
Yeah, no
was,
polish.
okay, this is the rifle range. You have a gun. Shoot the gun at the targets. We will count them. Shoot.
Yeah, it was very
Stop
basic,
shooting.
like qualification
Um,
style.
yeah, well, not just that, but like there was no. I mean, I don't like to say that I brought Sing Song a dance, but damn it, I brought Sing Song a dance. Like even the rules on the range. There did used to be rules on the range. It was like when we say shoot, shoot. Just the idea of telling people that today you will be firing your M16A2 service rifle. It is a gas operated, air cooled precision. Whatever. Um, you know, t- on this rifle range, these are your safety rules. You will treat, never keep, treat, all that stuff. Like
Yeah, having the
the
script.
this the salt, the pepper, the herbs, the spice. It wasn't there. It was just potatoes.
Yeah,
And potatoes is enough to keep you fed, but it's not enough to excite you.
right.
And we didn't have much of that, and we also didn't have many DIs. And so Command Sergeant HP showed me boot camp, and I was like, you know what, P? I got some ideas. Do you mind if I spin something on this? And he went to go grab something to eat, and I had a cigarette and just started scribbling on the back of the napkin. And then I ran him through my boot camp from start to finish, like all the preamble stuff we used to do. And he was like, "Oh, let me go grab some people." He goes and grabs a couple of the generals and the battalion commander, first battalion at the time, and Whitey Mac brings them in the room and was like, "Do that again." And I did it again, and they were like, "Yeah, you're going to be an RTC." So I think that was my start of leadership in the Cav. Was just I put myself out there. I had a good idea. I had balls way too big for my actual like tenure in the community,
Sure.
but I threw myself out there and I delivered on it. And then I just kept trying things. And if you can do that and you deliver, then people want to give you more opportunities to do cool stuff. And I think that was it wasn't really leadership, but it wasn't long before they invited me to attend an officers. Because back then we didn't have ODS, so they invited me to attend an officers board, largely because I came in and was like making those waves.
Yeah, do you think those are kind of the same things that like helped you want to stay because there was so much room for like opportunity and potential, and there was the like officer boards and things, so that you could actually find a way to like improve on things? Like, is that what motivated you to like keep
No, I
going?
mean, I think the thing that made me motivate to keep going was the people, because it wasn't like there was unchecked opportunity, right?
Yeah,
Back then, it was very much, unfortunately, back then it was very much a culture of personality. Um, if you if you caught the eye of the senior leadership, then you could get ahead very fast. And if you caught the eye of senior leadership, the the opposite was equally true.
sure.
You'd catch it in the throat very fast. And so there was good and bad mixed with that, right? I fortunately stayed in the good graces more often than I wasn't, but there were certainly some rocky moments there. I think more the people that I was hanging out with, the people that I was playing games with, um, and just the things I was able to do combined to make it attractive to stick around and put my time in. And then once things started to change and some of that uh, flexibility went away, admittedly. We lost a little bit of the flexibility when we lost a little bit of that cult of personality.
Sure.
Um, and things got a bit more regimented and structured, and SOPs became more biblical and less suggestive. Um, but at the same time, at least you knew what you were getting into at that point, and it didn't necessarily rely on the blowing of the winds and the turning of the tides.
Yeah, basically went from like a casual group to a more structured community.
Just, I would say it more the rules started to matter
Okay.
in terms
That's
of
fair.
like SOPs and how promotions went and things like that. There definitely stopped being less. Oh, I really like that guy. You're up, and oh, I really don't like that guy. You now have F and G tags.
Yeah. F and G's. Uh,
Hey man, I wore that tag with pride
I
for
believe
2 weeks, I think.
it. That's awesome. So when you're not doing Cav stuff, what is kind of like your favorite games outside of the ones that we support? Like, what is your go-to? Like, what are you doing to unwind from the Cav?
Oh, I mean that that varies depending on what time of year it is, right? So when WoW is in season for a new raid, you'll probably find me raiding on Wednesdays and Sunday nights. Um, and sometimes on Saturday nights as well, because I help a guild of like really old people, like geriatric bucks, try to get raid progress. I don't say that meanly.
No, no,
They
no.
know it.
It's
They say it
it's true.
themselves. Like the guild leader of that group is a 78-year-old great grandma who is a healing priest, and she has the response time of a slug crawling through salt,
Right.
um, which leads to some very frustrating encounters.
Especially
But
for
she
your
has the
healer.
most, yeah, she has like the most warm spirit, and so it works out. But yes, I like to help them try and make progress, and then I do more hardcore raiding myself. Um, if WoW's not in season or we're taking a break because we've already accomplished everything, then I'm probably doing like, I don't know, man, some Minecraft, um, or just hopping in and out of like whatever's new, whatever's in early access, testing out games that I think might work for the Cav,
Sure.
um, or just probably wouldn't work for the Cav, but are just new and I just want to see what's out there. Um, I was recently looking at Avowed, which is a very interesting single player game, but I feel like they left a lot of potential on the table that they didn't dive into. But it does have a fairly interesting magical system, so that was really cool. But lately, probably the most time waster has been all the mods 10 Minecraft.
Sure. Yeah. That's kind of the nice thing about Minecraft is like unlimited amount of mods to do different stuff.
Yeah, some of
Like,
y'all have seen my all the mods 10 base. I stream it on Discord fairly frequently.
nice. Love it. Love it. Always good to get outside of the norm and stretch your legs in the Cav community and play different games. And I'm sure if you're ever on and people see you streaming, they should pop in channel because I'm sure you don't mind having the company. So,
Dude, I give face tours every time I'm online. People go, "What the hell is that?" And I'm like, "It's not in Minecraft." And then they're like, "Well, what is it?" And I'm like, "Here's the nuclear waste processing facility where I make hydrofluoric acid and uranium hexafluoride." So,
it's awesome. So kind of jumping back into the Cav and your rise to Regimental CO. What kind of roles do you think it took to get to where you are now? Do you think it was like a set track that you followed, or was it just kind of filling the seats that were needed? What do you think led to your rise to where you are now?
no, I certainly wouldn't say that it's just like filling where it's needed. I think you have to have an appetite for being uncomfortable. I tell people all the time when they're trying to work their way up on to the leadership ladder. Um, and I've had this conversation with several of our current leaders. If all you've ever done is like go up through a line billet, like one of the like section leader, sergeant, platoon leader, go to ODS, pick up platoon leader, company commander, battalion commander, you're probably not the best looking fit for joining Gen Staff. If that's all you've ever done. And if all you've ever done is come up through the S shop and you've been an S1 clerk and then an S1 second IC, or back in the day NCIC, and then you went to officer school and now you're the S1 OIC and whatever, you're probably not the most attractive candidate on the table for joining Gen Staff. My philosophy has always been float. I would much rather, I think the people who are most attractive and who I'd probably want to spend the most time mentoring are the folks who, I don't want to say flop around because that sounds unintentional, but explore different areas and get to know like different groups and different sub communities and different work streams and different teams, right? Like spend some time in an S shop, and you know what? Spend some time in more than one S shop.
Yeah.
Switch battalions, whatever. But having a varied history is what I think makes it easier to become attractive for that level for advancing past that certain point. Kind of like when you get to battalion commander, we often see like battalion commanders end up sitting in that seat for forever. And then when a spot does open up, it's like, okay, which one of y'all looks the most attractive? Well, if all you've ever done is one thing and somebody else has done many things and has a much broader perspective, they might be more attractive. So have a broad perspective.
Yeah, helps round out all the experience, kind of sticking your hands into different baskets and taking the good things from everyone and molding them into your own. And do you think, as far as like your leadership style, how would you describe that? Based on the path that you took, like how would you say your leadership style works and makes you, effective in your role?
Oh man, you're asking this question to a completely different person than Second Lieutenant Osak. If you had asked me this question 14 years ago, I would say what was expected of me at the time, and that was foot to throat discipline. Very in your face, very just do it, and we're not going to talk about it. But that was the mentality. That was the atmosphere. Also, I'm not 27 years old anymore. Um, I don't know if it's age. I don't know if it's tenure. I don't know if it's changing jobs over the years or what. But I feel, I don't want to say corporate-esque, but I feel very, and maybe my current job at Netflix has bled into this a bit as well. But I feel like to be effective and not like just a tyrant, you need to farm for dissent. And so that's what I try to do. I'm not going to say that we always get to build consensus. I don't want to say that I want to try and be a lightning rod for consensus, because sometimes a decision just has to be made, and ultimately I'm the one that our members are going to flame in the forums for bad ones,
Sure.
which is fine. I accept being the target. But whenever possible, I want to try and create a room where different voices can come out, different perspectives can be given. And ultimately, I don't know if we're going to always make the best decision, but I want to be able to say that I at least took the time to hear everyone and hear the perspectives. At the end of the day, hearing you doesn't mean that I agree with you or that I commit to your position, but you shouldn't walk away feeling like I didn't even bother to hear.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's kind of your job to take advice from everybody around you, right? And then formulate it into what you view as like the best outcome.
So, yeah, I feel like I've tried to do my best at making sure that I had very, very differing perspectives in the room around me,
Sure.
as some of our recent debates will attest to. It's definitely not a yes man club. I don't. I think I would hate that. I think I would hate if I said, "Here's my idea, and this is what we're doing," and shut up, and then everybody was just like, "That's perfect." Like that would get old real fast, and we'd probably have really, really bad decisions really, really quick.
Yeah, everybody just
Um,
clapping their hands like, "Oh, you're so smart. It's perfect." Yeah.
yeah, that certainly used to be that at one point of the time in the Cav we got very close to that. I won't say we were there, but we were very close to that. There was a lot of yes manning. And I want to try and avoid getting back there. So I like a little bit of lively debate as long as we avoid throwing eggs at each other.
I mean, it's kind of like you said earlier. You like having a little bit of that spice, the salt, the pepper, the
Right. Plain mashed potatoes gets old real fast.
right. Yeah. So I guess tying into that, what has been your main goal, and what are your main goals for the regiment over the next 6 months to a year? Obviously, there's been a big focus on server upgrades, basically across the entire regiment. Like we recently did Squad and Hell at Loose and Reforgers getting servers, and we're looking
Oh,
at new
dude,
dedicated
servers
boxes.
have
So like, what's your main goals?
Servers has been an ongoing, never-ending conversation for the past, I don't know, 60 days, and will probably continue to be a conversation for 60 more. Um, Going into the first half of this year, I only really have two goals. I that's not true. There are 50 million goals. There are 50 million competing priorities. Some of them are aligned to a North Star vision. Most of them are probably not critical enough to become visionary, right? Um, but 90% of that can be, spearheaded and led by others, and it should be, right? Like ultimately, we want game leads to be empowered to really, for the most part, set the direction of the day-to-day operations of their games. And I really want to try and focus on the larger structural stuff, services, finances, pathways into future years, new games, closing games, like the big changes, right?
Yeah,
Not the layout of internally in an individual game, right? That should be somebody else's bailiwick, and I don't want to step into their house and mess up things that they've been working on, right? So when I say I have two goals, I mean like that I feel that are within my portfolio and scope to really be the one to set the agenda on. And one of those is getting our finances in better um, clarity and uh, a state that is more regularly transmitted,
sure.
and also just healthy. Um, we've made some efforts on that at the start of the year with the robust 2024 financials report. We at the end of last year, General Chance, when he elected to step back from day-to-day operations, we've installed a financials officer to just focus a bit on the core documentation of financials. Um, we are looking in the first half of this year, as I said in some of the posts that I've made, to one, recalibrate what we're spending and make sure we have a good understanding of all the various deals we have, because so much of our stuff isn't tied. It's not month to month. A lot of our stuff is
Sure.
tied up in these one year deal or 6 month deal or 3 month deal. And so when you look at outlays on any given month, if that's all you looked at, our spending spikes and jumps and spikes and falls and jumps, and it's very yo-yo-y. And so setting the right donation goals and making sure that we maintain a healthy seed in case there was a drastic event or sudden drop off in donations, times got tough for everybody or whatever, um, is really hard when you can't per month lay it out. So we're working on making sure that we get our servers where they need to be, and then we accurately gauge how much we're spending so that we can make sure we don't ask for too much, because I don't ever want to get to a point where we're asking members for lots of money that we're not spending and we're just continuously growing a bucket, because that has its own risks, right? I want to have a healthy bucket, but not an overflowing one. And at the same time, I want to get to a point where we're comfortable and we have a good workflow where we can quickly, at the end of a month or at the end of a quarter, um, collate all our receipts, pump it into our spreadsheets, and then publish a PDF being like, hey, this is our outlay, this is our ins and outs for the month, or this is our ins and outs for the quarter, and just have more of a routine cadence and very clear, transparent reporting of our finances. And the other is, well, you already alluded to it. It's the work we've been doing largely at the start of the year already, and was on our roadmap for the first part of this year, was to evaluate and modernize all of our servers. I think Hell Let Loose, we recently did an upgrade that was recommended on that. We're going to be talking next week around some more upgrades there for some of the other servers that weren't upgraded. We were waiting to get the feedback from. We recently did Squad, a new box. They're still, as far as I understand, in the process of getting the configurations and setups where they want to be. We're looking at, we did with Forger as an ask. They've decided to move games. But we also have Survivor Gaming coming up to an end. Our S6 team is currently working really hard on exploring lots of options on different providers, because we don't want to be tied down to just one provider. We want to diversify a bit. So we're looking at providers maybe we haven't traditionally looked at before to make sure we get the best performance for price values. Sure. So they've been talking in different Discords, all sorts of stuff, but finances and making sure that our servers are the best they can possibly be at a reasonable price point are really my goals for the first half of this year.
Yeah, and just for some context for anyone that's listening, the Survivor Gaming servers are basically the ones that are functioning for the current Arma 3 servers and DCS, I believe. And that's been an ongoing contract with a provider that we've worked with for, I don't know, what, 5-6 years, something like that.
Yeah, we've worked with them for quite a bit. It was an annual thing. They actually stopped business, I think it was a year or two ago. They closed off all their other clients. They haven't taken any new clients in, I think, a year and a half or more. They renewed us last year as a courtesy. We've been their only client now for the past year. And when our contract with them ends, that company is like done. They're closing up shop. So we're definitely going to have some replacements for that, because we have DCS that needs to have a new home. And we're hoping that we can get great hardware at a reasonable price, and then move all our Armor Forger stuff to it and have the right layout that we want there. But we're still looking at there's a lot of work going on. We've been talking with S6. We've been talking. I don't want to steal their work. The guys over in S6 have been talking with Bohemia and different people in the community, just to make sure that we don't pick a bad provider, but we're also not ignoring providers because they may not have the biggest name or the most reach. We were looking at a provider recently that they only have servers in Pennsylvania, but they have good pings for the East Coast server locations. And because they're just still trying to get their name out and really grow their footprint, they have really cool, really cut rate prices. So we're doing extra work on making sure we're not going to buy the wrong thing. But there's a lot of work that goes into making sure we don't waste member money. Because the worst thing for me is we spend money that either then doesn't get used because we buy more servers than we need for the uses that we're having, or we spend money on something that just sucks. It's a VPS that's underperforming because that provider often oversells their slots or something like that. Sure. And then we end up losing cash because we have to replace it because our people don't want to play on crap, right? And so I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what I think at this point is like my chief responsibility is being a good steward of our members' money, right? Like people, especially in today's economy and world, could probably spend that money on other things, and maybe should be saving that money for other things. But they give it into our care for their gaming hobby, and to make sure that they and all their friends can have good services. And if we fail to do that, then that's a big mess.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like, it's no different in my mind when I donate, the $5, $10, whatever I do a month. To me, it's the same as donating, $10, $15 for WoW or whatever MMO. Like I'm donating my $10 so that I can have engaging servers and providers that work for me when I want them to work. And it benefits every one of my friends. So it's kind of a no brainer to me.
Yeah, it really is. It really doesn't take much. Like I don't want to turn this into a donation call, but like I think when I looked at the end of January, I think it was something like 8% of the Cav donated on average. We had like 700 people in the Cav. There were an average of 64 donations per month, unless it was a month where we had like a call for donations.
Sure.
And the members who donate every month is a lot. It's like the same names every month because a lot of people set up recurring donations and just forget about it. Lord knows I don't even know what I donated. It got set up a long time ago. My wife probably tell you because she probably sees it on the credit card.
It just looks
But
like a
I certainly
donation to
don't know what
Grady
it
Weldon,
is.
though. So
You know, but if all 700 people donated like $5 a month, it would actually be too much money. Like
yeah,
that would scare me.
yeah,
Because at that point, that would be like, I don't know, something stupid like $3,500 a month if everybody just gave $5. Um, and we couldn't reasonably buy enough server hardware to spend all that. Like it would just be too much money. So that would
yeah.
be there's also a point where it's too much. Like I would be very uncomfortable if we had that much money going into the account every month. So please don't everyone like start throwing money at it like that because that would actually scare the fuck out of me.
Yeah, it'd be a lot more responsibility.
More than that, I think it would just mess up taxes.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
that's
Yeah,
the
because you start getting into it like, oh, we're making
pe-
too much money.
yeah,
Yeah,
people like may not know this, but like there's a lot of effort that goes into making sure like we don't have problems with how taxes get filed.
yeah,
And being an international group, it's a real risk we have to think about.
yeah. We definitely keep our bottom line very even when possible. So on that note, with new servers and new games and all that kind of stuff, obviously the Cav over time has kind of shifted away from the PVE scene. Well, I mean, it kind of started in PvP, then it kind of shifted to PVE with like Arma 2, Arma 3, stuff like that. And now it's kind of getting more into the competitive, like team versus team, player versus player, competitive play. So, what is kind of your stance on the future of the Cav? Do you think we'll continue down the road of being like a player versus player kind of clan? Do you think it'll ebb and flow like it has? Do you think we'll lean more into the casual side of doing more like PvE stuff? What's kind of your stance on that sort of future for the Cav?
I think it'll be whatever the members in the individual games want it to be, man. Like the Cavs never been PvE. It hasn't. Um, Even when we had Arma 2, it wasn't PvE. That's where the majority of the missions were for Arma. But during that period of time when Arma 2 was still around, we had Call of Duty 4 guys going to CalP, Cyber Athlete League. We had Call of Duty 5 at the time, and they were involved in a league for that. I forget the name of that league. We've had some smaller groups of people do like um, Cal IO, the invitation only Cyber Athlete League matches. We had folks in TGL. There used to be a lot more like not professional level leagues, but like leagues you could get into without spending money. And when we had members that were interested in that and that sort of gameplay was like available for their game, they went and did it with full backing and support. Hell, I played on some of those league teams. I'm not saying I was any good, but if you need a warm body, I was there. Um, and then in Arma 3, we flirted around with things like warfare in Arma 2 as well. Arma 3, I think we got into some bigger community thing with like large scale, like seasonal campaign missions with like lots of communities. And I
Hmm.
can't remember if those were like PvE or PvP. I can't remember. They might have been PvE. But ultimately, if there's a league or there's an opportunity, I don't think we'd ever get to the point where like we want to try and run a league or something like that. Like that would be excessive.
Sure.
Because you gotta there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, right? A lot of overhead and more costs. But if there's an opportunity out there and we've got a group of players that want to participate in it that are in the Cav, I can't imagine a scenario, as long as it's not like the hackathon league or something,
Sure.
where
Yeah.
we'd be like, no, you can't do that, or no, we wouldn't encourage that. Like we'd absolutely encourage folks to participate in that sort of play. So I think it ultimately what that mix will be is what's out there, what's happening, what's exciting, and what do people want to do, and then that's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah. So you don't foresee us though, like sponsoring a Cav like pro team or anything like that in the future?
No, I mean sponsorships mean money, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then we'd have to have revenue streams. And so like, we can talk about that. Like, why do we do donations anyway? Why don't we do revenue streams? Like, I know I for one would freaking the amount of Netflix cups I have in my house, you bet you, like if it was like Cav cups available for purchase, I'd probably have more than that, more than my Netflix cups, and my wife would lose her damn mind because she's already told me not to bring no more Netflix mugs from the office.
Sure. Yeah.
um, on more than one occasion, and I still do. I probably have that many Cav cups, and I know many other Cav members out there would have that many Cav cups, or Cav t-shirts, or Cav sweatshirts, or Cav sweatpants, or Cav socks, or Cav boxers. So why don't we do that? Why isn't that a thing, right? Because I'd love to do that. Very simply, licensing and and duty. Um, in order to do that well, you have to like partner with like one of those shops. I forget the names of the types of shops there are. Like there used to be several that like we looked at, but maybe Shopify or something,
Yeah.
right? Like
Shopify,
one of the
Good
shops that
Threads,
does that
stuff like
kind of
that.
like
Yeah.
that print out and whatnot. So you got to pair with them. You got to make sure the one you pair with has manufacturing and distribution centers in multiple regions. It can't just be a US based company because we can't screw over our Euro guys. And
Right.
if it's manufactured in the US and gets distributed in Europe, somebody's got to pay the duty on that, right? So now that inflates the costs. But also then you got to start looking at like, okay, what type of license do we have for TeamSpeak? What type of license do we have for our Windows servers? And at one time, I don't know how much of this is still valid today, but at one time of the Cavs life cycle, we looked at this very hard. Unfortunately, at the time, we were using all of our licenses were like school licenses from one of our members, um, former general. I don't think he was a general at the time, but General Carter. And we were like, he was printing out so many licenses from his school because he had a lot of access to school stuff. He's
Yeah.
going to school for a lot of these things. And so we were using a lot of school licenses for our Windows Server stuff. And we were probably breaking several Microsoft rules. And if it ever came up that Microsoft did an audit and we were pulling in this money, it could have went very bad. So we've looked at the idea several times. There's always been something, whether it was licensing or taxes or something. There's always been some reason that we had to say, we should probably avoid this until like we have to. So being a entirely donation based group, committing to like some sort of like pro team sponsorship or something, just isn't. It's not viable when our monthly incomings is so variable, and we're really only getting close to or a little bit under what we're already spending on services. We don't have like a huge cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's what we would do if everybody started donating $5 a month. You just start sending out like
You
a monthly T-shirt or something.
You know what? If we had 700 or even 500 $5 a month donation subscriptions, at that point, that we'd have to do stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um,
just to break even so
because
we don't get taxed.
just to just to get the holding money down, like
Yeah,
then it would be like doable because I would need to find some way to spend all that cash. Um, and I've seen it done different ways, right? Like
yeah,
I used to be part of a community where they had like a strict due. You paid $15 a year to get in. That community was stern going to do. I ran their plants. I worked my way through that over several years. Ended up running their planet side group for quite a while. Lot of fun with those dudes. And they had this, strict $15 due at the time. And we didn't have that much in terms of like server costs. There were a couple games that we had that were server costs, but a lot of our members are doing like Star Citizen, or not Star Citizen, Eve
oh
Online
yeah,
and Sturm and Planet Side, games where we didn't have to pay for servers. So there was a lot of money unused. And at the end of the year, they did things like giveaways and charities, and you win a raffle, you get sent a graphics card and stuff. So there's ways to deal with the excess money and get the held account, keep it from being too excessive.
sure,
But yeah, there's different ways to go about it. I like not having set dues. I'm very happy that we've been able to exist for as long as we have, almost 2 decades continuously, without having to mandate set dues and survive entirely on the graces and donations of our members. That's awesome. And I don't see us changing that. So if member donations behavior changes, we'll obviously change with it. Um, but our main goal is, how much cash do we reasonably expect to get every month, and what are the best servers that we can get for that cash?
yeah, makes sense, total sense. Um, Now, kind of jumping into some of your more personal experiences, do you have any like super memorable or like funny stories from your time coming up through the Cav or recently in the Cav that you want to share?
Oh, okay. Funny, memorable. I mean, I look back on some of them now and I think they're funny. I look back on some of the others and I think they're really cringe and I hate
Yeah, sure.
myself for them. Um, so there was the time that Second Lieutenant Collins, I think he was still a second lieutenant at the time. Um, he would know better than me. He now goes by the moniker of Warrant Officer Man. Um, Called me an asshole in the middle of an operation, and then left TeamSpeak after I got very mad. But admittedly, I was at the time being a numbskull. I'm glad that I've gotten older and more mature since then. After I used the lightning bolt from Zeus to strike his convoy because he was doing something I didn't like. Um, and I justifiably needed to be called an asshole in that moment, but I didn't realize it at the time. But I'm willing to accept that he was right in the moment. Um, I look back at that now and go, it was really funny for everybody else. It wasn't funny for me.
Yeah,
Um, but it was a memorable moment, and it's when I look back to when I realize, hey, maybe I'm being a bit unnecessary or extra. I go back and I say, would Collins call me an asshole right now? I have lots of memorable moments. Unfortunately, they're not all great, and I don't want to bring up bad blood moments. So
fair.
most of my starkest memories are terrible things, or just depressing things. I think some of the moments that stick with me the most are the ones that I wish I could forget. Um, I remember where I was when I learned that, crazy had passed.
Yeah,
I remember what I was doing when I learned that Cold Blood had passed. I things like that are stuff that you can't forget. But like those won't make for good entertainment. So I don't want to get dived into them.
Sure. But I mean, they help reinforce the fact that you are so connected with the community. You know.
Yeah, like I mean, it's the one thing that I hate about having stuck around and been part of this place for so long is that's gonna happen and it's gonna keep happening because we all, that's the cycle of life and we're all gonna keep aging. Or, shit's just gonna happen because we've lost members way too freaking young for really dumbass reasons.
Yeah.
As well. And those aren't any easier, right? Even if I didn't hang out with them, say, as much. So I think that's the one thing. If you ask me what I regret about being in the Cav for 16 years, I think it would be being around and seeing all the names grow in Arlington is probably the thing I regret about sticking around in one place for as long as I have.
Yeah.
It's like that has never gotten any easier.
Yeah. Yeah, that is probably the hardest part about being in the Cav as long as you have, for sure.
Which anybody who's listening to this and is a member of the Cav, you can hereby take this as an order. Nobody's allowed to die while I'm the GOA. You got to save it. Like, this hereby an order. Like, nobody gets sick. No, nothing. We are all now immortal until, like, I don't know, 2030 or something.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah,
I'm good with it.
I'm calling it the Odin protocol.
Nice. Good reference. Good reference. So I guess on a more light
I was watching
note,
American Gods.
American Gods. I don't know if I've seen that. What's that on?
Good show. I don't know what it's on, man.
Well,
I watched it on
Netflix.
I watched it on
I feel like you should have like.
I feel like
research.
I probably watched it. I probably watched it on the Carter box, the Kenosha box.
I think it's HBO.
Sounds like it's an HBO show.
It does. Yeah.
I'm willing to bet it's HBO Max.
Okay, I'll have to see if I can check it out. On a lighter
Awesome,
note,
awesome show. I think it was off of a book by Neil Gaiman.
Oh yeah.
I think.
Okay.
I think it's one of his books.
Yeah.
My wife nodded her head yes, so I got the reference right.
Nice. That's awesome. So as far as like your play style when you get into games that are, FPSs, what's kind of your go-to loadout? Are you going like heavy MG? Are you going rifleman? Are you going like rockets? What's your FPS play style that you jump to when you get into a new game?
All right. This question is varied and I need more specifics. Does this game have, if not realistic ballistics, at least some sort of ballistics model? Like, is there bullet drop and wind effect in bullet flight path? Do bullets have travel time?
Yeah, I would say
If
so. Like,
the
there's
answer
at
to that
least
question
bullet
is
drop.
yes. If the answer to that question is yes, then I am probably rocking a pistol and a sniper rifle of some caliber and design. Simply because I like maths and I like challenge and I just like maths. Like if I'm in Arma and I can get away with it reasonably, I probably got a sniper rifle and then like a pistol. Or if for some reason the mission is set so like I can carry more than that, I'll probably carry like some sort of more robust PDW, but like obviously, not trying to walk around with an RPG and a sniper rifle. That's not going to work well. You're going to get tired on the hill. You said you can run, but you're going to die tired. If the game does not have like reasonable bullet drop, wind effect, bullet travel time, then like if it's like I don't know,
like an arcade
line of
shooter.
sight, line of impact, then I'm probably walking with an SMG or something that has minimal horizontal recoil. I personally much prefer to deal with mitigating vertical recoil with mouse movement. than trying to deal with mushroom soup.
Sure.
If there's a gun that has less horizontal recoil, then I'm rocking that.
Are you
Because
more
vertical
like
recoil is just
hip
way easier to
fire
deal with.
or do you ADS?
No, I think even when playing like modern Call of Duties that aren't on the Cav rule set, I still aim down sights for like everything, unless like I come around the corner and you're there, right? If I come around the corner and like you're there, I'm not wasting the time on the click. I'm just gonna let it rip,
Sure.
because it's probably not a server that the Cav has rules on, right? Or whatever. If you surprise me in squad, I'm just gonna tax you, like. But if it's not a surprise or there's some distance there, then I'm gonna ADS just because aim small, miss small, right?
Yeah.
And it's easier to deal with recoil 9 times out of 10. Um, and I really just want to get you killed and move on. Um, yeah, whatever has the least horizontal recoil.
Yeah, that was like when I first started playing Hell Let Loose, that was the hardest thing for me. Was I was so used to aiming down sights all the time. But in that game, if anybody's ever close to you, like if you're ever, within like 10, 20 meters of each other, like you're
Oh no,
you're
then I'm lighting
better
you
off
up.
just
I'm just
hip
letting it rip.
firing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just especially on games that have like a slow ADS,
Yeah.
which is also the reason why I try to avoid. You'll probably see me avoiding like, especially in games like Hell Let Loose or Squad, you'll see me avoiding the larger weapons because they often have slower ADS times.
Yeah.
So like anything that's going to be kind of plotting, I try to avoid those weapons as much as possible. And then anything that's got really high horizontal recoil, I try to avoid those weapons as much as possible because like I just want to slap and go, and not have to fight with the recoil. Um, I think that holds true even on modern Call of Duties. Like it's usually SMG or a fast firing PDW, for like my sidearm, and then like a assault rifle that has good medium distance fire and then really nice recoil control.
Yeah. Nice foregrip or something on there.
Some of the pistols in Call of Duty are ridiculous though, so your mileage may vary. Um, but you get some of those 3-shot pistols, and it's like, you know what? Game over. Slap silencer on it to help control the recoil, and just we're going.
Yeah. Game over.
And that's if I'm not hitting you with knives. I will admit that I like to. If you are not paying attention to me, I'm probably not shooting you. I'm probably going to hit you with an axe or a knife or a fist or whatever if the game allows it. Not because I want to troll you, but because I got really addicted in Battlefield 2042, like the old one with the
Yeah.
airships.
Yep. Yep.
I got really addicted to collecting people's dog tags.
Yeah, man, that was
So,
like peak Battlefield back then when it was like Bad Company and
oh, that was
Battlefield
that was the shit.
2042. Like
Yeah,
collecting dog tags, that was like the whole game.
that was the shit, man. I wanted to have everybody in the Cavs dog tag.
Yeah. Build out a massive
I was I
collection.
was
Everybody
so
had cool
I
custom
was so
ones
addicted
too.
to it. I got NCS for it
I
because
can only
you
hope.
weren't supposed you weren't supposed to knife the generals outside of approved. Well, you weren't supposed to knife specific generals outside of, specific knife the general events. It was considered disrespectful. And yeah, I caught. That was one of the reasons why I wore FNG tags for a while because I kept knifing,
It's
certain
awesome.
people.
I feel like that rule was probably only created because some generals needed a handicap.
No, I mean I get it, right? Like I get it. The Cav was much smaller, and
Sure.
the same people were playing every day, and you kind of knew how they played and where they'd be. And some people, myself included, for a while, may have intentionally targeted certain folks for knivings, and then we may have giggled about it a bit too much. And so
It's like
I'm
the
not blind to
old
the fact
school
that
old school
yeah, it was a
trolling.
little bit. Yeah, it was a little, when you intentionally seek out to do it, which a lot of us did, I can see it as like disrespectful.
Sure.
Versus like, hey, I just happened to come around the corner and you were looking down. your rifle scope for the past 3 minutes. You can't blame me. I just happened my way into it. No, like some of us would actually be like going out and intentionally like hiding around a corner because we knew that snipers like to stand in a certain area and then waiting
Yeah.
and ignoring normal gameplay and then just wait for 5 minutes because you know somebody's going to come there and then knife him. And that was not nice. So I get it. Um, but yeah, anybody ever wants to knife me in any game, please feel free to try. It's not that easy, as some of the Hell Let Loose guys will tell you when I've gotten on their server. Because I used to be addicted to knifing people, I check my six like ridiculously. I'm constantly looking. Like every 30 seconds, I'm getting out of the scope and I'm spinning around in a circle. It's ridiculous. It gets me killed a lot because the movement ends up showing up for other people and they just shoot me.
Sure.
But if you can knife me, by all means, you can get some. You can have the bragging rights for it.
Hand out a special medal for it.
I mean, we used to have a medal that people got for knifing the general, but that was like during the knife the general events. I don't know if we still have anything for that.
I mean, you could always do it. Just say, oh, anybody who does it gets a Bronze Star with Valor or something. All right.
That's excessive. Look at you trying to inflate people's chests.
Hey, you might as well. Getting to our closing questions. Is there anything that you would like our community to know about you that we haven't already covered? And anything else that you want to share about your vision for the regiment?
Anything I want you to know about me that we haven't already covered?
I know it's kind of a big question because
that's a big question.
16 years is a lot of time. So
no, I don't think so. Look, at the end of the day, people are going to know me by their interactions with me. Honestly, I hope most people don't have to interact with me. I choose my words there very carefully. You'll find that I am pedantic. It's not that I don't want you to interact with me. I hope that you don't have to. Yeah. Because if you have to interact with me, if you must, if you have to, then either you're a battalion commander or you're in trouble. And so I hope that the average member isn't forced to engage with me that often. But I'm always open to talk, and I'm happy to. You'll find like I often hop in these days, just random channels and bullshit when I'm walking my dog and stuff. So if you see me online, hop in, right? Unless it says don't hop in, because usually there's a bunch of people in the room, and we're probably talking about something lately about money or servers, and we don't want to just be talking about that with everybody. It just makes the room a mess. So, but outside of that, like I'm always free to talk. I'm happy to talk. I like to talk once I get talking, clearly. My wife is now giggling. But I figure if you need to know, you'll find it out because you're interacting with me, right? So I'd rather not tell people what I want them to know about me. You'll figure it out, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I can just come up with bullshit, and I probably would. So make your own opinions. As for what I want folks to know about the vision of the Cav, I mean, I already covered what my two goals are for the first half of the year, and I think those are that's my defining criteria for everything. I think, much to perhaps the chagrin of the general staff at times, I'm very focused on those two questions of does this improve our finances or the transparency around our finances, and does this promote better services for cheaper? Yeah. And if it's not one of those two things, it's probably not like something I'm beholden to. I'm very much flexible about everything else. Even things that I don't think are necessarily the best decision. I just want to make sure that I understand it. And everything else is free to try on the table, right? I think the most out there thing we're trying right now is the hottest topic in the room and the source of probably a lot of anguish from a lot of people. Well, I know some people. And that's been Reforger from like A to Z, right? Are the decisions and timetables on moving into Reforger were very chaotic. Um, there were a bunch of false starts. Um, Obviously, some of our membership being left behind because Reforger doesn't necessarily support. Let's be honest, Reforger is not a full game. It's a game landscape. It's an engine showcase that
Yeah,
Bohemia
early access
originally
basically.
said we're not doing it. And Bohemia even said, like, we're not intending to fully flesh this out. And then late last year, they said, you know what? We're actually going to flesh this out more. And that added a lot more. Before it was, to go back to the analogy from the beginning, at first it was very much just potatoes and carrots.
Yeah.
And there was no herbs, there was no spices. There was potatoes and carrots. It was an engine showcase. And that's what we thought we were only ever going to have. And we thought the timetable on Arma 4 was much shorter. And they've kept kicking that can down the roadway. I think now they're saying somewhere in 2027.
Yep.
And they, pushed out some surprise updates for Reforged. They brought in some spice. But that spice and those herbs that they brought don't account for everybody. The flight model is
Arcadey.
non-existent for some
Yeah.
types of aircraft, and Arcadian and weighty and sluggish is shit for other types of aircraft. The time period that it's set in ignores simple things like, we've had red dot sights since I think the 70s. Um, and these things don't exist, which makes a lot of things a little bit harder. I don't think there's tanks in there yet. I think it's just mechanized stuff. I don't think there's any real tracks.
Yep.
So there's some folks that are being left behind in that move because the MOS isn't fully supported. And that's obviously a rough call to make. It may not be entirely the right call on the long term, but we're making it because we think that over the next 2 years, 2.5 years, until we hope that they stop kicking the can down the roadway and give us Arma 4, that they've committed to still adding more stuff. I don't remember the full roadmap, but there is more stuff coming from Bohemia for it, and the modders are doing a lot more with it. And ultimately, we expect, and we might be too optimistic, but we expect that over the next 2 years, we're going to see more resources for those that aren't fully serviced right now. Like they've already committed to improving the flight model for the helicopters because they even know that's rubbish. And we hope that like there's going to be enough additional there that it's going to even out a bit, while accepting that it's not going to be perfect, right? But at the same time, the risk of maintaining, say, Arma 3 continuously, it wasn't one that was palatable to the majority of First Battalion members. So do we service everyone with a game that's showing less engagement internally and externally consistently for the past 18 months? Or do we go with what is being asked for? Because I want to be very clear. This was a battalion-led initiative. Do we go with what's being asked for that doesn't service everybody but has high engagement and high excitement around it right now? And so, hey, we made a risky decision that we hope will do well over time, but we know is going to be rough landing, just like every other game transition has always had a rough initial landing.
Yeah.
We had the same sort of problems and issues with the Arma 208 to Arma 3 thing. Like, this isn't the first rodeo. It's always a bit rough. Likewise, we've currently got a bifurcated stand up really going on with console Reforger on one side and, with a separate holding pen and proving ground, and PC Reforger over here, and then we're using the same services. And that's not a long-term vision either, right? We're looking to get a critical volume of console players, so that we can, while we're gaining console weight, we can shop for, are there any unique friction points? Are there any hotspots? Are there things that we take for granted that aren't working well for console players? And let's try to amplify that with a little bit of an echo chamber, or more appropriately a subring, where they're all together and they're bitching to each other, and those complaints are going to surface up more readily and more rapidly than if we have 5 console players and they're spread out in 126 PC players, and they don't actually get to talk to each other and know that someone else has the same pain, right? So you put them all in the same room around each other, and one of them starts talking about the pain he's having, and the other guy goes, that's hard for me too. And then we can go, okay, we can fix it, right? So that's it's a short-term thing, though, or it's designed to be short-term, and we're looking to, really reevaluate that as early as late April, early May, or if we reach critical volume and we've got, 40, 50, 60 console players, where now we're spreading it out, and every section's got one, or every platoon's got one, every company's got several, and so there's less risk of losing great insights early on. But that decision to set things up that way at the start, obviously leads to a bit more chaotic, a bit more frustrating for everyone involved, I'm sure. And it might not be the best layout. Maybe things would work better another way. I've never said that I will have the right decision on anything. I think what's important is, like I said before, I want to make sure we listen to all perspectives and then make, if not the best decision overall, simply because it's impossible to always know what's the best. Maybe not the perfect decision, but the best one based on the information we have and the resources that we have. The one we can live with that has the least risk of harm, and that we can balance on the whole. And so Reforger is probably the riskiest thing we're doing right now, because, hey, Arma 3 was stable. Losing engagement, lower recruitment, whatever, but it was tried and true. No, you can't argue with that. Arma 4, no guarantees. It's spicy, it's exciting, but also it's a bit risky. Doing console proving ground the way we're doing it, also a little bit spicy. Mm-hmm. Squad 42, I think. The guys over in Squad are wanting to start flirting around with Squad 42 in the near future. All of this is spicy and exciting. I think we're going to need to be open to risk and open to rough this year, because we're going to be trying things, and those things may not always go perfectly or optimally or even the best guess. We're probably going to be wrong at times. We will hopefully course correct quickly when we see we're clearly wrong, but I want to be trying to shake things up this year, and I'm excited to try new things and try new games and try new ways of trying new games.
Yeah.
And see what we can make of it, right? If it goes great, then wonderbar. And if it goes terribly, we will ride those waves as they come. But I'd rather try shit with a little bit of risk than be stagnant and just have people if you're not trying new things, if you're not taking risks, you're dying slowly, and I don't want to do that. So excitement is the third name of the game for 2025. Uncomfortable, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think
Yeah.
is what we need.
Fair enough. I think that's a good, I don't know, a summary of that situation. So I think that'll be appreciated by a lot of those that are involved. Um, and our last question, where can members reach out to you if they want to reach out to you? If they have ideas or just want to chat? Obviously, you already went over if they have to reach out to you, then it's probably not a good thing. But where can they reach out to you if they want to?
Right. If you want to engage with me, you're not being forced to. I get DMs on the forums every day. I'm sure everyone does. Use the forums. Um, if you see me on Discord and voice, hop in, please. Um, I don't think you'll ever see me put D&D on a channel unless me and the generals are yelling about something or me and someone else are talking about money. I think money is the only time I put D&D up. Um, Mostly because I don't want everybody to hear me worrying about it. I think you can attest to the fact that I think I stress about where we're spending money and if we're spending it right way more than I probably need to. But as someone who didn't grow up with money, I'm very, very, very gun shy on risking your money. Um, but yeah, jump in Discord if you don't see that up, please. Talk about games, talk about whatever, talk about bullshit. Send a message on Discord. You know, I don't necessarily respond to all of them quickly because some days I get a lot from different sources, but I generally try to respond to everything. So, and if I don't, just ping me again because I probably lost it in a big list.
Fair enough. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and have a little conversation. That will wrap up this episode of the Cav Casts. We hope everyone enjoyed the conversation and took away something valuable. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel in case you want to hear all of our future Cav Casts and get updates on when they're coming out. You can also follow all our other socials that are listed on the Discord if you're interested in seeing our other content. I know some of the S5 guys have been putting out some like weird kind of goofy TikTok meme stuff that's kind of funny and entertaining. But we'd love to hear any feedback that you guys have on that stuff. So again, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, I am Nexx and Burton. And thank you again, Kleinman, for taking the time to sit down with us.
Yeah, man. Y'all have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you next time.